Hello, and welcome to the regular Furrows News Report. It's Friday, January 30th, 2026.
And we're looking at a week with some pretty sharp lines being drawn, financially, politically, and I think culturally, too.
It's a dense week for sure. We're going to start with the hard data, the labor market stats, and then move into a very, very active opinion section.
A lot to unpack there.
So here's the roadmap for today. First, the news. Unemployment statistics from Hagstavon. The rate is steady, but there's a shift in duration.
Right. Then we get to the opinions. First up is Ben Arabo, who is arguing against the proposed Faroes climate law.
Following that, we have Helgi Abrahamsen. He's questioning the wisdom of pushing for independence in the current geopolitical climate.
Then a very pointed proposal from Bill Justinian to strike family reunification rights for foreign workers.
And we'll finish with a really heated debate on Islam, democracy, and public order.
Yeah, that one features Mark Jimenez, Shur Skale, and Jenna Savrana. It's quite the exchange.
All right, let's get right into the news. We're looking at an article by Aki Bertholdsen on the latest data from Hagstavon. This is for December 2025. What do the final numbers tell us?
Well, on the surface, it's a picture of, absolute stability. The total unemployment rate for December stands at 0.9%.
0.9%.
And that's the headline figure. It's actually identical to the rate we saw back in December of 2023. So in the aggregate, no change at all.
Okay, 0.9% is, for all intents and purposes, full employment. But the headline number can often smooth over the cracks. What about when you break it down by gender?
And that's where you start to see the divergence. It's not the same picture. We're seeing a split.
Oh, so?
Unemployment among men has actually risen slightly. It's up by 0.1 percentage points, which brings their rate to 1.1%.
And in terms of actual people?
That's 183 men who are full-time unemployed.
Okay, and for women?
It's the opposite trend. Unemployment among women has dropped by that same amount, 0.1 percentage points, landing at just 0.7%. Yeah. That's only 102 full-time unemployed women in the whole country. It's a remarkably low figure.
It really is. But there was another detail in the data, something about the duration of unemployment. That seems to be the really critical nuance here.
It is. This is where it gets interesting. So the data shows that the total number of individuals affected by unemployment, anyone who touches the system at all, that number dropped by 24 people compared to the year before.
So fewer people are losing their jobs in the first place.
Exactly, which is good news. However, the number of full-time unemployed persons, so people who were out of work for the entire month, that number actually increased.
It went up.
It went up by 13 people for a total of 285.
So let's just clarify what that implies statistically.
It implies that the labor market is becoming a bit stickier. Fewer people are falling into unemployment, which is great. But those who are already there are finding it harder to get out.
They're staying unemployed for longer.
For longer periods, yes. The churn has slowed down. So while the economy seems stable on the surface, for those 285 people, the door back into the workforce is, it seems, getting a bit heavier.
Okay, let's move on to the opinion section. We're starting with a piece by Ben Arabo, No to Climate Law, Let Us Not Make the Same Mistake as Europe.
This is a very direct critique. Arabo's whole argument is that Faroes politicians are essentially copy-pasting legislation that other countries are already in the process of abandoning.
He starts by looking internationally, right? He specifically mentions the UK.
Yes, he claims the UK is set to scrap its 2008 climate law. He uses that as his primary warning signal. He also tackles the narrative around food production.
What's his point there?
His point is that global agricultural production has grown for 60 years straight, despite all the claims that climate change is hurting it. He's really challenging the basic premise of the crisis, at least in terms of food security.
He also brought up some safety statistics about weather, which I found to be a very specific angle.
A very specific one. He cites data saying that deaths from weather-related events have dropped by 99% per million people since 1920.
99%, that's a massive drop.
It is. And he attributes this entirely to technology and, crucially, access to cheap energy. His logic is that fossil fuels and modern infrastructure are what protect us from the weather. So, he argues, we've never been safer.
And he connects this directly to the economy, looking at so-called green politics in places like Germany and the UK.
Right. He asserts that these green policies have caused energy prices to just skyrocket.
Yeah.
He argues this has led to deindustrialization, factories closing or just moving away.
And his key point there is about carbon leakage, right?
Exactly. He says if a factory closes in Germany and moves to Asia, you haven't actually reduced global emissions, you've just moved them. So Germany loses the jobs, but the planet doesn't get any cooler.
And so how does he apply this to the Faroes, specifically that net zero 2050 goal?
He calls it unreachable, both for us and globally. He calls the law a bureaucratic paradise. But his biggest concern is shipping. For an island nation completely dependent on ships, he says extra taxes on oil are, and this is his word, suicide.
And he also argues these taxes aren't shared equally?
No. He says green taxes always hit low-income earners the hardest. If you raise the price of heating your home or fueling your car, the poor feel that immediately. The wealthy can just absorb it.
So what's his solution? What does he want the government to do?
Scrap the proposal. Just get rid of it. He says the government's focus should be on one thing: securing cheap, abundant energy, electricity, and oil for the population. For him, it's about maintaining the standard of living, not following European trends.
From the climate to the Constitution. Our next piece is by Helgi Abrahamsson, titled Not the Right Moment to Talk About Separation. This is about the Jadar Semna, or National Consensus.
Yeah, this comes after some recent back and forth in Parliament where the Prime Minister didn't really clarify if the whole coalition agrees on leaving the unity of the realm. Abrahamsson points out that Tjóðveldi is very clear they want separation, but he thinks this is just the wrong time.
And he brings up Brexit as a comparison.
He does. He uses it as a kind of cautionary tale. He suggests people in the UK voted on a wave of emotion, but now many are regretting the consequences. He's basically warning the Faroes public not to make that same mistake.
His core argument, though, seems to be about the geopolitics of the North Atlantic. He uses Greenland as an example.
This is the absolute heart of his argument. He says small nations just can't rule alone in the North Atlantic anymore. He argues that if Denmark were to leave Greenland, there are, and he uses the word predators, waiting to take over.
Predators, that's strong language.
Very. It implies a direct threat to sovereignty. He warns that if the Danish kingdom retreats, other global powers will step in and they will not offer the same favorable terms that Denmark does. The world is just changing too fast, he says.
So his conclusion is simply to stay put for now.
Exactly. He argues it's just too dangerous to dismantle the current unity of the realm, the Ríkisfélagsskapur, given the instability in the world. He sees the safety provided by the kingdom as essential right now.
Okay, let's move to the next piece. This one is from Bill Justinian, and it's a major proposal on immigration policy. The title is, Therefore, We Should Strike Family Reunification.
Yes, Justinian is outlining a pretty significant change to the terms for foreign work permits. He's identified what he sees as a structural problem in the system we have now.
What is the current situation with these permits?
Right now, a one-year work permit grants an automatic legal right for a spouse and any children to get residency here. And this applies even if the spouse has no job lined up.
And Justinian sees this as a loophole.
He does. He argues that it's a loophole for permanent settlement, not temporary work. He even does the math. Yeah. He estimates that giving out 1,000 work permits doesn't just mean 1,000 people.
Right, because with families.
With families, he says, it could mean 4,000 people. He also brings up the legal context, noting that the Faroes never adopted the asylum sections of the Danish Aliens Act.
Meaning our law wasn't built for this?
His point, exactly. It was built for individual workers, not for this kind of mass family migration.
So what is his actual proposal?
It's very direct. He proposes removing the right to family reunification for the first 3 to 5 years of a work permit.
That's a very strict condition.
It is. He says this makes the terms crystal clear. You come here to work, and then you return home. He thinks this would cut down on the need for integration policies and expenses and would prevent what he calls an invasion of foreigners.
Okay, that brings us to our final segment, which covers a very heated debate on Islam, democracy, and public order. This involves 3 separate but connected opinion pieces.
Yeah, this is a complex back and forth. It all starts with Mark Jimenez responding to earlier comments made by Sjur Skal.
Let's start there then, Jimenez's piece. Response to Sjur Skal, democracy and double standards.
In it, Jimenez accuses Skal of being on a crusade against Muslims. He claims Skal is defending Israel and, operating with double standards. The core of his argument, though, is about data.
He wants to see the proof.
Exactly. He demands that Skal produce the specific survey he's been citing, the one that questions Muslim support for democracy. Jimenez basically claims Skal is just using Facebook comments, not real data.
And he also talks about a specific event in Copenhagen, a procession.
Yes. Skal had apparently characterized it as threatening. Jimenez argues it was just a peaceful demonstration and criticizes that characterization. He also goes on to question the credibility of some of Skal's pro-Israel supporters.
Okay, so in response to that, Sjur Skal published a rebuttal, a glimpse into Danish Islamism. And it sounds like he brought the sources Jimenez was asking for.
He did. He lists 4 specific sources.
Right.
First, a DR documentary from 2016 which showed that 160 people left Denmark to fight for ISIS. And Scala's point is that they were radicalized inside Denmark.
So integration failed, in his view.
That's his argument. Second, he cites the TV2 documentary Mosques Behind the Veil. This was the one with hidden cameras.
And what did that show?
According to Scale, it captured teachings about stoning for adultery, beating children who don't pray, and the total submission of women to men.
And his third source?
It's a book, Islam Guiden, published by Islamist Fund. Scale cites this because it describes Islam as a total state system, Sharia, which he says is incompatible with democracy.
Okay, and finally, he gets to that survey data, especially about the youth.
This is the Wilkes survey from 2024. Scale highlights a couple of stats from it. First, that 35% of Danish Muslims believe the October 7th terror attack was justified. But the key stat for him is about age.
What did it show?
It showed that 28% of Muslims aged 18 to 29 are willing to break the law for Islam.
And how does that compare to the older generation?
For those over 55, it was only 3%. So Scale uses this to argue that radicalization is actually getting worse over time, not better. He warns the Faroes to learn from what he calls the Danish and Swedish security threats.
And this brings us to the final piece in this debate from Janice Avrana, which brings the issue right here to Torsham. It is unnecessary to go abroad to experience Muslim aggression.
Yes, this piece reports on a very specific incident at Finsen on April 8th. A meeting was being held there with some visitors from Israel.
What does Avrana say happened?
He describes a mob of protesters outside who formed a kind of gauntlet. He claims attendees, including some elderly locals, were shouted at, called child murderers.
Can police were involved?
Yes, he states that police protection was needed to get the guests out safely. He also reports that a local doorman was injured in the chaos and had to be sent to the emergency room.
So what conclusion does he draw from this event?
He argues this is proof that the issue is not harmless, that the aggression has already arrived in the Faroes. His stance is very clear. Those who don't respect Faroes' peace and values should just be turned away at the border.
And that covers the full scope of the news and opinion pieces circulating this week.
Yes, indeed. From labor stats to climate laws, independence, immigration, and, well, some very deep cultural conflicts.
Like and subscribe to Pulse Fundamentals for more content like this. Sources linked below.